The Brutalist just won the 2025 Golden Globe for Best Motion Picture Drama. At 3 hours and 35 minutes, it is longer than any film to be nominated for that award since 1963's Cleopatra, and it will hold a similar record at the Oscars should prevailing Best Picture predictions hold true. And not only does it earn every bit of its runtime, wherein each scene is either independently engrossing or later paid off, but it would not be as powerful without its imposing scale. The Brutalist opens with Laszlo Toth, the Jewish architect from which the film derives its name, arriving in New York from Europe in the late 40s after surviving the Holocaust. Adrian Brody introduces us to Toth as a modest hard worker, effusively thankful for every bit of kindness he has shown from those around him. He is polite, generous, and most importantly, ambitious, the model immigrant my country romanticizes. But concurrently, Toth's wife, herself an accomplished English-fluent journalist, and niece are unable to join him because of immigration restrictions. Ambition is desired while paradoxically the human beings driven by it are not. My friend Fisher shared a review of the film that architecture critic Kate Wagner wrote for The Nation. She expresses appreciation that the film avoids portraying architects as misunderstood visionaries and instead shows that the architect, no less than the furniture builder, the coal shoveler, and the draftsman, is also a worker. Toth's pleasant exterior is ground down to a raw nub as the film progresses. The wounds he sustains are from the wealthy patrons he works for, who, however effectively friendly, treat him as, to borrow again from Wagner, the latest jewel in their collection of wealth. If it's death by 1,000 cuts from microaggressions to grotesque degradation, each nick and gash is significant both to us and to Toth, painful in the moment and as a memory poisoning his psyche through the several decades the film spans. There isn't an individual piece I would take out, even one that struck me as cheap and tasteless at the moment, like one of those Jenga pieces you can just effortlessly remove, felt upon further reflection to be actually one of the ones that would topple that tower. But aside from a lack of singularly disposable scenes, the holistic statement of a movie this big could not be cleanly done away with. I'm struggling right now to work out a personal policy about how much to read criticism of something I might write about myself down the line, because sometimes I can't get another person's reflections out of my head. One such case was reading David Ehrlich's blurb in IndieWire's Top 25 Movies of the Year, which observed that The Brutalist has been constructed to embody the aesthetics of its title character, both in length and the physical weight of the reels needed to screen in 70mm, as in contrast with the sturdy, imposing buildings the film's protagonist uses to assert himself on a country that wishes to reduce him to a tool. But I feel there's some more room to expand on this with the way the film makes physical and temporal distance tangible. The title sequence, end credits, and teaser trailer all utilize a crawl that gives the impression of seeing only a small piece of a huge architect's draft drawing, too big for our field of view rather than traditional credits built to accommodate an aspect ratio before disappearing. The film will similarly use its running time to separate its characters by hours and football fields of film length. Ursabet, Toth's wife, writes to him from across the Atlantic for much of the film, and we're denied seeing her actual face during that time. The hours where they don't share the frame separate them in time and space. Even the 15-minute intermission, hard built into the 215-minute runtime, complete with a bespoke countdown animation, is one more gargantuan object separating the couple. Walking out of the theater, I was not in love with The Brutalist, but I've just liked it more and more as I've backed up and been able to take in what was too big to grasp in the minute-by-minute viewing experience. I don't plan on rewatching it anytime soon, but I hope that theaters will hold on to reels and screen it every so often in 70mm. If you can do so now, I would recommend seeing it in theaters more than any other movie that I saw this year. With the intermission, it's actually even less uninterrupted runtime than either of Scorsese's two most recent works. It's not as intimidating as it seems. But I also want to give a second and even more emphatic recommendation of a long movie, and that is the director's cut of Wim Wenders' Until the End of the World. Originally released in 1991 as a 3-hour film, it completely flopped. The original soundtrack might have even been more successful than the film itself. Wenders had asked his favorite artists to make music they expected to be releasing a decade in the future in fitting with the film's fiction. It included original songs from R.E.M., Talking Heads, Elvis Costello, Lou Reed, Depeche Mode, Nick Cave, and the Bad Seeds. Okay, you get the point. Wenders was never happy with this cut of the film, and I'll let him describe what happened.
The first cut that we watched was 12 hours. Eventually we had a cut that we showed to all producers and that we considered was just it. That was the film we had set out to make. And then the disappointment started that the producers were not ready to even remotely think of releasing it in that length. Well, it was an independent production, but in order to finance it, I had signed that I would release a film under 3 hours. Stick to your contract, buddy.
Wenders and his editor then conspired to secretly and at their own expense save their desired cut of the film.
Peter and I sat there and we went secretly to the lab and asked them, what do we have to pay? And it was a huge sum. And finally, in my company, we just did it because it was the only way that this long version would ever exist.
Until the End of the World follows a French woman, Claire, as she journeys to discover what she wants from the next step of her life after she breaks up with a man who cheated on her. The film is then narrated by that ex-boyfriend, played by Sam Neill, writing his own semi-fictionalized account of the story unfolding on screen. I've buried the lead a bit. This cut is 287 minutes long, just under 5 hours. It is the longest movie I've ever seen, but I'm gonna remain adamant that this is a movie that could not be experienced as a series of episodes. The magic about this cut is that it feels like 6 or 7 90-minute movies that bleed into each other as Claire's priorities shift and she journeys across 4 continents following the next love of her life. I don't think that this work could achieve the same effect if watched in chunks across multiple days, because having them in proximity allows you to feel how seamlessly one event leads to another. I felt like I experienced the journey of a character unmoored and was just as surprised as Claire with each time the movie and her life becomes something entirely new. It's also an incredibly fun sci-fi film. Set in 1999 but filmed in 1990, the giant technological leaps shown are so on the face absurd. Like, I don't believe Wenders actually thought things would change this radically in 9 years, though after writing the script I did look and see that the story had been in development since 1975, so maybe at that point he did. But that absurdity also doesn't stop it from being really prescient.
It was still fun to project ourselves into the future of the audiovisual revolution that had just started. The word digital was just still, I think, only known to some techno freaks, but nobody had any idea that everything was going to be digital. Images and text and our whole lives. And the film tried to project itself into that future.
The closest the film has to a central plot is that William Hurt has this device with the ability to transmit vision to the blind, and the CIA and several companies want to get it from him. Concurrently, an Indian satellite armed with nuclear weapons has malfunctioned and is spinning unmoored towards Earth. The USA has floated the idea of shooting it out of the sky, and the rest of the world waits in terror, worried that this will cause a chain reaction across similar satellites and subsequently nuclear Armageddon. All the while, our main cast of characters just goes about their lives, relegating the impending apocalypse to background noise. If I had to criticize this cut, I would say that I wish it had a built-in intermission like The Brutalist. There's a natural place for it here too. It's odd contrasting these two films though, because right now people are mostly watching The Brutalist in theaters, whereas I'd not be surprised to hear the majority of people who have seen this 5-hour cut watched it at home on disc or Criterion Channel. I'd be interested to hear stories about what screenings of this cut were like when they were in theaters. Not everyone wants to spend 5 hours inside watching something, but a lot of us are willing to binge watch 5 episodes of a TV show. Viewed in those terms, I hope that this video makes at least one person watch the 5-hour cut of Until the End of the World. If you can plan the time on a weekend and factor in some bathroom breaks and maybe a pleasant walk halfway through, I think you'll be able to get invested without being totally demoralized. It's one of 2 movies over the past year, along with The Red Shoes, that I felt most comfortable inducting into my personal all-time top 10. Though I think it'll be at least a decade before I rewatch it because I want my first viewing experience to remain special. It's still gonna remain in my thoughts though. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be releasing similar stuff every Friday if you want to subscribe and see where we're going. My username's also the same on Letterboxd, and I'm just Moxie on Blue Sky if you want to follow me on either of those places. Hope you have a lovely weekend. Adios.